Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today's video we will be tackling how I made my Inosuke boar head. So if you too wish to become the king of the mountain, keep on watching. Start by printing out your pattern pieces. You can find the pattern in the description box below. Once everything is printed out, you can line them all up and tape everything together. Cut any little excess pieces off and be careful for curious and playful cats, please. This is pretty much the whole pattern set all taped together. I did include this little guideline just to show if you need to create any angles, how to create these angles. So if the arrow is pointing away from the dotted line, as you will see here, then it will show you what angle you need to cut that piece at. So at this one, you're going to cut a 45-degree angle away from the dotted line. Cut all the little pattern pieces out. And all of these little notches for the registration marks, you can either cut them like I am doing, or just do the registration marks how you usually do them. I just find this the easiest way. So this is what your final pattern piece should look like. The way that this pattern works is that you're going to start with alphabetical and also numerical. So A will connect to B, B will connect to C, and then you can also see that 1 connects to 1, 2 connects to 2. So if you're not sure which is the next piece you need to do, you can follow either the numerical or the alphabetical. And some of the pieces, there are smaller pieces that will connect to one larger piece, so just be aware of that. Side B correlates to the other side of the head. So what you're going to do is basically cut out all of the pieces, outline them, flip it over, and outline it again. Make sure you label all the pieces as well because it'll make it a lot easier. Once I had outlined all of my pieces, I labeled them with the letter and also with L or R to determine whether it was the left side of the head or the right side of the head. Make sure to get all of those registration marks because it'll make it a lot easier to line everything up later. Once all of your pieces are outlined, you're going to take your box cutter. I also like to take this grinding stone that I have, and I'll just sharpen my box cutter between every cut to make sure that it's nice and clean cuts. And here we have our resident supervisor to make sure that I'm doing some good work here. Yep, she is satisfied. She has given me the stamp of approval with that little paw print. On this piece, make sure that you cut out the little dot. And on the ear, that's where we've made our slanted cuts so that when we glue it together, it makes a nice little rounded shape. Now all the pieces are cut out and you can use your contact cement to glue it all together. I like to take a little piece of scrap foam and, my bad. I like to take a little piece of scrap foam to spread out the contact cement. And please make sure you are wearing a respirator or you are in a well-ventilated area because this stuff is basically troll snot and it is quite toxic and it stinks to high heavens. So basically you're going to want to spread a thin layer on each piece that you want to glue together, wait for it to dry, and then stick them together. And as you can see, once it's glued, it's stuck. Once you get to this piece, I would highly recommend gluing G and H together before connecting it to the main piece. It really makes this little corner section a lot easier. And as you can see, it's starting to take shape. His little snout is coming together. For the eye, we're going to put glue on the bottom piece as well as the section to connect it. And we're going to connect and glue pieces 10, 11, and 12. I will show you in a second what that looks like. glue this little dot together. It'll make a nice little curved piece. And this is what your two halves should look like once you're down. Now just magically poof them together. No, it's not working. Shit. Okay, you're gonna have to glue it together. I'm sorry. Put glue on each side, not forgetting the under section of the nose / mouth area. And just be patient with yourself. I have left this at real speed so that you can see how long it took me and how much time I was taking slowly lining up those registration marks. This is not easy because each half is quite large. So you just have to like take your time, go through it slowly, be patient with yourself, and you'll get it together. It's fine. Once it gets to like the middle eye area, it gets a lot easier, but the back to the top of the head is quite tricky. So just take your time. And this is what your GIMP mask, Inosuke head looks like right now. It does look like nightmare fuel. Now we can glue the tips of the ears together, and I like to just snip off this extra little bit of foam because we don't need it. I didn't make any registration marks for where to put the ears because I think everyone has their own vibe of how they want their ears to look, but this is basically where I did mine, from like that line to that line. So if you want yours to look like mine, you can sort of copy my reference. Otherwise, just do your ears how you want to do them. As you can see though, there is like this weird little like slide that's happening, this little whoop, whoop. So we don't want that to happen. We do want it to slightly like have a bit of a gradient to his head. So I took some thin foam, it's like 2mm craft foam. I cut out 2 triangles, and then I basically just rounded the bottom of the triangle, fitted it to the back of the ear, and glued it down. It doesn't need to be pretty. It's going to be covered with fur, so don't worry about how pretty it looks. It's literally just there to make like a nice gradient for the fur to sit on. I made like a little foam ring to fit inside the nose. That's what we will be building the snout onto. And then I took some foam clay and just made this little ridge for his nose. You're basically going to want to make the bottom like a very sharp ridge while smoothing out the top. A good trick with foam clay is to lay some water onto the foam so that the foam clay will stick to the foam. And then you can also take some water to smooth out the foam clay and to shape it exactly how you want to. I took foam clay as well to make the little ridges of his eyes, just to make his eyes stand out a little bit more. Again, just be patient, just work it until you figure out exactly the shape you want his eye socket to be. You'll see I make like a little ridge underneath the eye socket. I don't know if that makes sense. There you can see I've made that little like dip, and then I've made sort of like a little mountain eye socket thing. And then you're going to want to do the same thing to the bottom. Don't forget the bottom. Once again, this does not need to be pretty. It is going to be covered in fur, so please don't stress about it. You just need to get the general shape so that when the fur lays on it, you can see that there's like a raised eye socket vibe. Now I put that foam ring back into his nose and basically made like a ring of foam clay around it so that it's level with the rest of his nose, so that his snout is the same size as the rest of his nose. And I basically just started building up his nose shape. I had some reference images out. I had also previously made a clay version of his nose, but the clay was far too heavy, so I ended up not using that. So yeah, just find some nice reference images, get your foam clay, and just let your inner artist, your inner sculptor come out. Once again, take your time, be patient, it'll all come together. The nice thing about foam clay is that once it's dried completely, it is the same sort of texture as regular foam, so you can sand it down. You'll see later when I show you mine, it is rather lumpy and bumpy and not very pretty at all. And I basically just took my Dremel afterwards and sanded it down. So yeah, don't be too hard on yourself. Here's where I was making the little snout area. I just laid it down on my workstation, made the little, like, I don't know, ridgy snout shape, and then used my box cutter to cut out the little nostrils. The nose is probably one of my favorite things on this mask. I just think it's so cute. And here you can see this is before it has dried. It is very lumpy. Okay, and now here's where I made his little horns. As you can see, I made clay versions of the horns as well, and I tried to follow that same shape, but I ended up not liking the shape, and I basically just cut off the bottom. You'll see later what I did, but yeah, I ended up changing the shape. For the eyes, I took this kitchen sieve thing, used the eye pattern piece, cut out 2 of those and painted it black. Then I took that same pattern piece and cut out 2 of these little frame sections, I guess you could call it, per eye. You're going to want to make it a little bit bigger than the actual eye pattern piece so that you can sandwich that mesh between the 2 foam pieces. And I just used hot glue to glue all of this together. Please be careful when working with hot glue. My fingertips basically don't have any feeling, but please be careful that you do not burn yourself. I then just took some masking tape and taped the bottom of each of these little eye sections so that I could tape it inside the head, and so that I could check that the size of my little eyeballs were right. So for the eyeball, I had this Christmas decoration that I just cut in half, glued 2mm foam to the back so there was something to like stick to the mesh, and then I basically just shoved that bad boy in the eye sockets to make sure that everything looked right. And you're welcome for the second sleep paralysis demon of the evening. For the paint job, I kind of took different variations of blue and I tried to make like a nice gradient. It's not the cleanest, but I'm pretty happy with it. You could probably find resin eyeball tutorials if that would work better for you, but this is what worked for me. When painting the pupil, I put a big glob on one of them and then just pressed the 2 eyeballs together so that they would be in the same position, same shape, all of that kind of stuff, and then I just cleaned it up. Also, don't forget the weird little ring he's got around his eyes. And this is when I took my Dremel and I just shaped everything, as you can see, just like getting rid of all the weird little textures. And I was also using my Dremel to shape the nose a little bit. I wanted there to be a little bit more depth to it, a little bit more like sunken in areas, some more raised areas. So this is where you really get to like carve it out and really make it look cool. So yeah, don't stress too much about the sculpting process because you can fix it up afterwards. Then I took my heat gun and I just blasted all around the nose just to heat seal it and get rid of any little fuzzies. And I did the same with the tusks. As you can see, that's how I changed the shape. And then I also used my blade to score in some texture. Please be careful when you do this. We don't want any cut fingies. I took some Plasti Dip. My supervisor was being very curious, once again, making sure I'm doing a good job. You can put your Plasti Dip in some warm water to make it come out a little bit smoother. And then you can just Plasti Dip your nose and horns. Okay, so here is arguably the toughest part of the whole build, not because it's hard, but because it is tedious and exhausting. If you are planning on using faux fur, you can completely ignore this step. If you are cheap like me, keep watching. You're basically going to want to cut little strips of yarn the same length that you want the fur to be. And this is method 1. You're going to tie the strips to another long piece of yarn, basically to make yarn wefts. And taking a metal pet brush, you're going to brush every single little strand out. You'll see it starts to look a little bit crazy, and there's like this floof. You can keep the floof, the extra floof, by the way, if you want to use it for like stuffing or something. That's what I do. And then you can take a hair straightener and just very quickly go over it. You don't want to melt the yarn, so very quickly straighten over it and then brush through again, and you have some beautiful, beautiful faux fur that takes forever to brush out but looks really cool and is super affordable. Now I am basically gluing all of these little wefts. I just used hot glue to glue the wefts to my head. There is another method to the fur that we will be using later for the top of the head, but I basically just used this weft method for the bottom. It seemed like the quickest way to cover the whole bottom of the head in fur. Also, I would highly recommend, I don't know if you can see the little holes that I poked through there. That's where I want my tusks to be. So I put toothpicks into the tusks and then stab the toothpicks through so that I can find the spots later. Now this is the second method for the yarn. Instead of tying it to another long piece of yarn, you're basically going to want to just hold the strings, brush it out, straighten it, and then cut it down. And then what you can do is you can take some white glue, brush it onto your project, stick the yarn down, and then glue over top again. Once it all dries, it'll be very, very pretty. I also attached some glue to the tips and then just sort of pushed the yarn over, just so that it covers the tips of the ears a little bit and just makes it look a little bit cleaner and prettier, I guess. As you can see on this side, I think it looks very, very cute. I also would highly recommend painting the insides of the ears before doing the yarn, but that was my bad. So this is just a quick little update on how I'm doing it. Make sure to also cover the bottom of the ears in the brown fur, so there's a little bit of a gradient. I'm sort of just showing you here how I laid out the fur. So I'm covering the bottom of the ear fur with the back of the head, basically, and it sort of all just blends in really nicely. So as you can see, I used the weft method until sort of about like just underneath the ears, and then I started doing the second method just so that it looks a little bit neater and doesn't look so lumpy and bumpy. And this is where I realized that I'm going to need to paint the inside of my ears, and it was not easy because I had already done the yarn. So please learn from my mistakes and paint your ears first before attaching your yarn. So I lost a lot of the footage of me painting the nose and the tusks, but as you can see, I basically painted the nose pink and then did some darker pink in like the corners and the crevices and stuff. And for the tusks, I basically just painted them an off-white color and then did a little bit of like a brown gradient towards the bottom. Here is another update so that you can see sort of the direction that I'm gluing the yarn down. I'm also going to be gluing down the forehead and then around the eyes, and then going down the nose. I hope this helps you with your direction for the yarn, because I was very lost. And then I basically just used the fur to like cover up the insides of the ears. You can't really see the insides of the ears, so it's fine. I didn't stress too much about that. And he is now covered in fur. You can see how I sort of glued the fur to curve inside the eye sockets and to curve inside of the nose. I think it gives it a really clean look. You could also probably paint the head like a light brown first as well, just so that there isn't the black foam peeking through, but I kind of liked it. Now I'm sticking the tusks in. I just added some hot glue to the bottom of the tusk and sort of pushed the toothpick through that hole. And then I glued on the other side of the toothpick and then used some cutters to just cut the toothpick down. So I was really struggling to find the hole, so I would recommend sticking the toothpick from the inside, moving the fur, and then you'll be able to find the hole. Don't forget to cut the toothpicks from the inside. You don't want toothpicks poking your face when you put your mask on. And then I hot glued his demented little eyes into his head. Oh, I'm so proud of him. Look at how cute he is. Now you're almost done. All you need to do is take some black yarn and glue it to his face to make the little mouth. Hot glue his adorable little snout into his cute little nose. If need be, you can also take some clippers or a razor or some scissors and just like trim down some of the fur to make it look less choppy. I kind of like the choppy look though, so I'm leaving that just as it is. You can maybe like fluff him up as well to make him look a little bit more chaotic. But yeah, this is the Inosuke head. I am super proud with how he turned out, and please do feel free to tag me if you recreate this cosplay. I am super nosy and would love to see it. I really hope that this tutorial helped you to become the king of the mountain, chaotic himbo of your dreams. Don't forget the link to the pattern is in my description. If you would like to take your cosplay even further, I also have a tutorial and a blueprint for his dual Nichirin. Now feel free to put on your mask, go torment Monjiro, and have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching. Bye!